Okay, I will just start. Hi, Adrian. Welcome. Hi, JM. So welcome to week 6 of a systematic introduction to the Buddhist path. We're, I think, halfway there. Just a few reminders before we start, or before I hand over to Ayya. So during the session, if we have questions, as usual, please post on the chat. And this session is going to be recorded and the video will be posted on YouTube. So during the lockdown, Metta Center have been closed. So we are not getting the donations that we normally get. So if you enjoy our events and would like to support and donate to Metta Center, I will post on the chat along with some announcements of upcoming events. And if you would also like to support and donate to Metta Rama, which is the nuns monastery where Ayyā Suvīrā is staying, we'll also send out the link on the chat. And I'll also be posting the file of the Word of the Buddha, which is the PDF that we use for the course. So Ayya, on to you.
Okay, great. So nice to see that some of you have continued. Nice to see some familiar faces and maybe some new faces too. So we'll begin by saying Namo Tassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa. So I'll just get my screen sharing on, and hopefully you will all be able to see the PDF. So we should have finished off last week talking about stream entry, and we would have been talking about right view. And what we'll be doing from here on in is going through each of the elements of the Noble Eightfold Path and expanding them in a little bit more detail. So, where we left off last time, we were talking about the characteristics of a stream enterer, of a Sotapanna. Sota meaning a stream, Apana meaning someone who has obtained the stream. In English, sometimes translated as stream enterer or stream winner. And their characteristics, as are listed here, is they've abandoned the view of having a self or a soul, doubt, and belief or clinging to rites and rituals. So that's where we left off last time, and also looking at the concept that for these awakened beings, they're no longer subject to rebirth in a lower realm and are destined for full awakening. And we have the Dhammapada verse, which states, absolute rule over the earth, going to heaven, supreme sovereignty over all worlds, the fruit of stream winning surpasses them all. So, very nice little inspirational verse, but also quite important for how we prioritize our lives and our goals. Because here, the verse is stating that actually whatever goal we have, stream winning is a much better goal to be aiming for, or awakening even beyond that. So we have a little bit more text here in italics. We have some commentary by Venerable Bodhi. Venerable Bodhi being the famous scholar monk who's now based in New York, but well known as a translator of the Sutta Pitaka. So the text reads, on entering the irreversible path to the attainment of Nibbana, one becomes a noble person, i.e. an Arya Puggala. The word noble, Arya here, denoting spiritual nobility. There are 4 major types of noble persons. Each stage is divided into 2 phases. The path, Magga, and its fruition, Phala. In the path phase, one is said to be practicing for the attainment of a particular fruition, which one is bound to realize within that same life. In the resultant phase, one is said to be established in that fruition. Thus, the 4 major types of noble persons actually comprise 4 pairs or 8 types of noble individuals. So I'm just going to pause a little bit there to comment on this word Arya, because in Vedism, in Brahmanism, in the religions which gave rise to modern day Hinduism, you have this concept of the Aryavata, which is the Aryan lands, denoting a particular physical location, quite often conceptualized as being the Kuru country near modern day Delhi. And, to be a noble person is to have the specific customs of the Brahmanic class of that particular region. So we have a very, the pre-Buddhist conception of who is noble, it's quite limited because it's limited along these class lines and along these regional lines. So this adoption of the meaning of the word Arya here, meaning someone who is spiritually noble, that's actually a very radical shift of meaning. And in Buddhism, there's a special word which denotes these words which have a particular use in Buddhism, which is different to the use which existed in society beforehand. So sometimes this set of words is called Ayyā Suvīrā, so meaning, in the teachings of the Aryas. So just to be very clear here, the word Arya has nothing to do with race, it has nothing to do with region. It's about internal cultivation. Just a point to note. So continuing to read on. So, and this concept of there being 4 types of awakened beings, 4 types of noble persons. So 8 individuals, but if we put them into pairs, there are four types. That's a canonical idea. It's found in the Ratana Sutta, which is quite commonly chanted as a Theravāda devotional sutta. Okay, so breaking them down. So when we look at these awakened beings in terms of 8 individuals, we have one practicing for the realization of the fruit of stream entry. So actually we can even break this class down further, because there are 2 classes. One is the Dhamma follower and one is the faith follower. So these are people who've maybe encountered Buddhism, and traditionally it's said, the Dhamma follower, they have the faculty of investigation and investigation as being their foremost attraction to Buddhism. That's what's driving them. And these type of people are people who've reasoned through things and they've come to rationally adopt Buddhism. And the second type of person who are practicing for the realization of the fruit of stream entry, the second class is called the faith follower. So in Pali, the Dhamma follower is Dhammanusari, the faith follower is Saddhanusari. So this second class, the Saddhanusari or the faith follower, they're someone who is maybe more emotionally oriented and was maybe attracted to Buddhism because of the chanting or because they saw a monk and they were very inspired. And, that faith, that confidence is what continues to drive them onwards. So we can actually break that class number 1 down a little bit further. Number 2 is the stream enterer, which we mentioned previously. Number 3 being one practicing for the realization of the fruit of once returning. Number 4 being the once returner. Number 5 being one practicing for the realization of the fruit of non-returning. 6 being the non-returner. 1 practicing for the fruit of arahantship, and 8 being the arahant. So in Pali, we have some core concepts here. So we have stream entry, which is the Sotapanna, the once returner, which is the Sakadagami, the non-returner, which is an Anagami, and a completely awakened being, which is an arahant. And these words in Pali, the translation is fairly close. They're just very straightforward translations of once returning, Sakadagami, non-returning, Anagami. So we'll continue to read a little bit further to see what Venerable Bodhi has to say about these people. So the first 7 persons are collectively known as Sekhas, trainees or disciples in the higher training. The Arahant is called the Asekha, the one beyond training. The 4 main stages themselves are defined in 2 ways. 1, by way of the defilements eradicated by the path leading to the corresponding fruit, and 2, by way of the destiny after death that awaits one who has realized the particular fruit. So that should be a fairly straightforward point, actually. That when we say once returner, non-returner, we're talking about the what happens after death. When we talk about Sotapanna, we're talking about the eradication of some defilements. But I don't think that's a very important point. I think it's enough just to know the names. Okay, continuing on. The suttas group the defilements abandoned into a set of 10 fetters, sangyojana, and we talked about this word fetter being related to our English word yoke. So we can see that root there, that root yuj, meaning to yoke. So we've talked about stream enterers. So this is just an expansion on what what a stream enterer has actually severed at that moment of awakening, which causes them to become a stream enterer. So what they've given up is the Sakkaya Ditthi, that is the view of a truly existent permanent essence, either as identical with the 5 components of existence or as existing in some relation to them. So when you see it on the page there, it doesn't look that exciting. But what that means in reality is that on a subconscious level, right, we tend to identify, ourselves with our consciousness, or we tend to identify ourselves with our actions and activities. And what the stream enterers had, they've had a preliminary type of realization that's caused them to actually give up that subconscious tendency, to identify with their with one of the 5 khandhas, but very typically consciousness, because consciousness is a bit slippery. Like I mentioned earlier, typically it's a lot easier for us to not identify with our body, but somewhere deep down we might have a view, this knower, actually that's really me. So that one's gone on the level of view. So again, very important here, this word ditthi. A view is something that's solidified. It's an idea or a concept that motivates us and that's held over a long period of time. So it doesn't, that's all that's really meant, is that they don't have the solidified or, deeply held concept anymore. So the second one is doubt, vicikicca. So doubt being about the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, and the training. And 3 being the wrong grasp of rules and observances, silabbata paramasa, the belief that mere external observances, particularly religious rituals and ascetic practices, can lead to liberation. And Venerable Bodhi here is coming from within the commentarial tradition. the commentarial tradition particularly emphasizes that, this is the wrong grasp of rules and observances. So, for example, in the Buddhist time, we had people who were cow ascetics. Their religious practice was to pretend to be a cow, and that was like their penance. And the Buddha's saying, actually, there's no religious reward for acting like a cow. If you act like a cow, it's not just that you're going to be reborn as a cow. Actually, it's worse than that. If you act like a cow, you're putting yourself at a real risk for being reborn in hell, because you have a basically, your conception of what spirituality is really just messed up. So the Buddha was quite firm about these deviant and incorrect grasps of spirituality, just how damaging that they can be for us psychologically. So, that would be the commentarial approach, although it's not quite clear from the Sutta Pitaka itself, because this word paramasa, the mas bit, M-A-S, that relates to our English word massage. So it does actually have a sense of you take your vow, your religious observance, and you massage it. You cling to it, you attach it to it. You have, very much this sense of identification with it. In compound with the word paramasa, paramasa can mean like a perversion as well. So, it's a bit, people have different takes on what the Sutta Pitaka actually says about this, although the commentary goes down more along the line of like a perversion. So hence we have Venerable Bodhi's wrong grasp of rules and observances. And again, like this word bhata or vrata, it's still very common in Hinduism today. That's something like, for example, especially the wife would do as a religious practice, undertaking some type of fast on behalf of the family or on behalf of the husband. So one of the duties of a good Hindu wife is actually to undertake some vrata, some fasting. But vrata can refer to any type of religious practice or religious penance. Sila, of course, being moral conduct or some type of discipline. And I think how Venerable Bodhi has defined it further as the belief that mere external observances, particularly religious rituals and ascetic practices, can lead to liberation. I think that's probably quite spot on, because what is actually the key component here is that this person, they've had some type of fundamental inner realization, so they're not really looking to these ritualistic behaviors or superstitious behaviors in the external world for their liberation, because they've seen what it really is, and they've seen it very concretely inside of themselves. So very major shift in their worldview and orientation. As before, if there are comments, questions, please just feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll address them as we go along. But I think it's nice, because there is a block of text here, I'll just keep on reading and commenting on Venerable Bodhi's comments. So the stream enterer Sotapanna is assured of attaining full enlightenment in at most 6 more existences, which will all take place either in the human realm or the heavenly worlds. The stream enterer will never undergo an 8th existence. The present existence is counted as the first, and is forever freed from rebirth in the 3 lower realms, hells, the realm of afflicted spirits, ghosts, and the animal realm. So they don't need to take any effort for this to be something that's true about them. It's something which is true on account of their awakening. So it's not that they need to try anymore. I need to do merit to get reborn in heaven. I need to, do this. I need to do that. It's just, it's a fundamental truth of their nature. And what happens to that karma? The karma that might have previously caused them to be reborn as an animal, or to be reborn as a ghost, or to be reborn in hell. There's a technical term for that, which is called ahosi karma. So it's null and void. So it's pretty good, because they don't, it's just it's erased. So stream entry is a wonderful thing. Okay, so we have number 1, the Sotapanna. Number 2, the Sakadagami, does not eradicate any new fetters. He or she has eliminated the free fetters that the stream enterer has destroyed, and additionally weakens the free unwholesome roots, wanting, aversion, and delusion, so that they do not often arise, and when they do arise, they do not become obsessive. As the name implies, the once returner will come back to this world only one more time, and then to make an end to suffering. So again, pretty good. You know, there's not much left there of samsara for this type of person. You know, they only have to come back once. So, I mean, sometimes people, they struggle a bit conceptually to understand what a Sakadagami is, because there's no new fetters that are eradicated. And sometimes people wonder, you know, is the difference between a Sakadagami and a stream winner, is it that the Sakadagami is celibate? And it's quite interesting because, you know, there's examples in the canon. Some of the Sakadagamis are celibate, some of them aren't. So you can't really make that distinction. So it is what the text says. It is that they have additionally weakened the free unwholesome roots. Okay, moving on. The non-returner anagami eradicates the 5 basic fetters. That is, in addition to the free fetters eliminated by the stream enterer, the non-returner eradicates 2 additional fetters. 4, desire for the desire for the 5 senses, so kama raga, and 5, aversion, which is patigga. Sometimes you see different words used for these, but I'm just using the terms I think that come from the Anguttara Nikaya. So again, you know, this is very wonderful. And in the Buddha's time, a number of prominent lay disciples were actually anagamis. You know, there were people who were very serious and attained meditation practitioners. So someone, you know, someone who has, you know, they've completely eradicated their ill will. Aversion is just a fancy term for ill will or frustration or negativity. And, you know, they have no desire, or, you know, they don't have a quest for the world of the 5 senses. So a very pure person. Okay, and the comment here is, because non-returners have eradicated desire for the 5 sense world, they have no ties binding them to this world. They thus take birth in the pure abodes, Suddhavasa, only for non-returners. They attain final nibbana there without ever returning to rebirth in the worlds of the 5 senses. Okay, so very important conceptual point. So we have this concept of the Pure Land, of the pure abode, the Suddhavasa. And, you know, there is a particular type of Buddhism, especially prominent in East Asian Buddhism, you know, possibly the most widely practiced form of Buddhism in the world today, that does involve the practitioner making an aspiration for rebirth in a Pure Land, you know, typically the Western Pure Land, on the basis of Mahayana practice, which involves reciting, you know, Amitabha 10 times, or, you know, undertaking some aspiration. So there is a Mahayana practice which, you know, uses similar terms, but actually what we're talking about here, we're talking about the pure abodes as defined in the early texts, which is a place where awakened beings are reborn. So they're a subcategory of the Brahma world. And these ones never come back to the human world. They, you know, they become nibbana, they become extinguished in the pure abodes. So when there are Buddhas, you know, these pure abodes, they get swelled up because a lot of people get reborn in them. Continuing on, the non-returner, however, is still bound by the 5 higher fetters, i.e. attachment to jhana, attachment to the immaterial attainments. So we have jhana being the 4 jhanas, as what counts as samadhi, or right samadhi, and we have attachment to the immaterial attainments, which are the in Pali what are called the ayatanas, or more more informally, the arupajanas. And we also have, what they're severing is, it's very important. They're severing the conceit, I am, and restlessness, and we have 10 deluded thoughts or perceptions. So I think sometimes we also see ignorance for number 10. Like, if it were me, I would have put ignorance, but obviously we respect Venerable Bodhi's choice. Those who cut off the 5 higher fetters have no more ties binding them to existence. These are the arahants who have destroyed all defilements and are completely liberated through final knowledge. So again, even for these non-returners who are destined for rebirth in the in the pure abodes, they still have defilement, and there's still attachment there. They're attached to the meditation states that they've attained. They're attached to the formless meditation states that they've attained, and they still have, because they're attached, they still have this fundamental identification with these states. They're thinking, this I am, this meditation state I've attained at some kind of emotional level, not at the level of you, at the level of just very fundamental emotional identification. The Anagami still has it, but the Arahant severed that. And, in addition, what goes along with severing that, they've also severed their restlessness and their ignorance. So this is really, this is the core thing, what we saw in the dependent origination, what's actually driving the whole thing of samsara, gone. So very, very amazing. So that might be a good point to stop for questions. I'm just going to ask you all, are we all following? Can we get some thumbs up if we're following so far? Or is this, are we not following?
Okay.
Doing okay? Thanks so much, that helps. So if we're doing okay, we can keep moving. I mean, the terms there, they should be fairly straightforward terms. There's only 4 of them. So just to recap, Sotapanna, Sakadagami, Anagami, and Arahant. Or in English, stream enterer, once returner, non-returner, and Arahant. This word Arahant means a worthy one. So the worthy ones. Okay, moving on. And I'm just going to keep moving through because there's a particular point I want to get to by the end of today. I want to get right through right motivation to right the end of right speech. So we have another sutta. We have this is from the Samyutta Nikaya, from the Khemika Sutta at Samyutta Nikaya 22.89. So this sutta is stating, friend Khemika, when you speak of this I am, what is it that you speak of as I am? And this dialogue actually is probably between 2 monks, between Venerable Dasaka and Venerable Khemika. And, the answer is, friends, I do not speak of form as I am, nor do I speak of I am apart from form. So, this body, this form, this monk is saying actually he doesn't think of it as himself. And, there's nothing outside of his body that he sees it as himself either. I'm just going to pause to turn the light on because I think the light is fading. Give me 1 second, I'll be back. Okay, so continuing on. So next, I do not speak of experience, Vedana, as I am, no perception as I am, no volition, i.e. our mental activities, our will, the things we do and construct. He's saying, he doesn't think of this I am, nor of consciousnesses as I am, nor do I speak of I am apart from consciousnesses. Friends, although the thought I am has not yet vanished in me in relation to these 5 components of existence, still I do not regard anything among them as this I am. So when we read this, does anyone know like what this is actually telling us? Can anyone guess what level of awakening this is referring to? I mean, just in chat, or feel free to unmute if we have any thoughts.
I think it was a non-returner.
Yeah, so we have one idea, non-returner. Adrian says stream winner. And I mean, non-returners are a good guess because, like I mentioned previously, a non-returner, they haven't severed this thought of I am. So I mean, it's possible that he's a non-returner, but I think this would be a more, like, to me, this, what I would think is stream winner, like Adrian said. Although that being said, this could equally be true of once returners and non-returners. So thank you for your input. So what he's saying is that the thought of I am has not yet vanished in me in relation to these 5 components of existence. So he's still, like, maybe there's still something underlying there, but he still does not regard anything among them as this I am. So on the level of view, at least, this person clearly has purification of view, but maybe not purification of the underlying conceit, I am. So continuing on, suppose, friends, there is the scent of a lotus. Would you be speaking rightly if you were to say the scent belongs to the petals, or the scent belongs to the stalk, or the scent belongs to the pistils? No. And how, friends, should you answer if you were to answer rightly? You should answer the scent belongs to the flower. So too, friends, I do not speak of form as I am, nor do I speak of I am apart from form. I do not speak of experience, Vedana, of perception, of will, of consciousnesses as I am, nor do I speak of I am apart from consciousnesses. Friends, although the thought I am has not yet vanished in me in relation to these 5 components of existence, still I do not regard anything among them as this I am. So we have this introduction here of a simile in terms of, maybe maybe we could compare this like underlying conceit of I am as as being like a scent. You can't really say like where it's hovering about, but it's definitely hovering around a flower. So maybe this person who has purification of view, but who's not an arahant yet, they can't say actually where this conceit is hanging out, but it's definitely in there somewhere. So friends, even though the noble disciple has abandoned the 5 basic fetters, still in relation to the 5 components of existence, there lingers in them a residual thought I am, a desire I am, an underlying tendency I am that has not yet been uprooted. So there we go. He is an anagami. I mean, he's talking in third person here. He's just making a general statement. But this is just how like monks talk in the text. This is a humble thing. So he's making this general statement, but actually he's talking about himself, and you're meant to infer it because obviously you don't go around telling people that hey I'm a non-returner. This is the more polite way of doing it. People will work out what's going on. There we go. So sometime later, they dwell contemplating dependency on causes of the 5 components of existence, such as form, such as its origin, such as its passing away, such as experience, such as perception, such as will, such are consciousnesses, Such is their origin, such is their passing away. As they dwell contemplating dependency on causes of the 5 components of existence, the residual thought I am, the desire I am, the underlying tendency I am that has not yet been uprooted, this comes to be uprooted. So they become an arahant. How do they become an arahant? Sometime later, they understand the khandhas even more deeply in terms of their conditioned nature. So, and that leads to this underlying I am conceit being uprooted. So there's nothing, between stream entry and arahantship. Actually, it's the same thing. Like there's no, like what we do now as Buddhist practitioners, through the awakening path, there's nothing that radically changes. It's the same thing all the way down. As Buddhist practitioners, we try to see anicca, dukkha, anatta, and a stream entry also sees anicca, dukkha, anatta. Once returner sees anicca, dukkha, anatta, and a non-returner sees anicca, dukkha, anatta, and an arahant also sees anicca, dukkha, anatta. So it's just that this this perception, it's deeper because firstly it's an awakening experience. So it's not just something we can control, it's something that happens according to its own causes and conditions. And secondly, it happens on the basis of deep meditative cultivation at this level. So on the basis of the 4th jhana. So that it's just a question of depth. So we have another simile. Suppose you washed a cloth in a washing machine, rinsed and spun it, then put it in a dryer. Although that cloth would be clean, still it might retain the residual smell of soap powder. Then you would hang it out in the sun to air. After a while, the residual smell of the soap powder would vanish. So maybe you've washed your robe and the donors, they gave you something, you don't know what it is, but it was really strong, and now all of your robes smell like frangipani. And people are going to wonder what type of nun are you because you stink of frangipani. So there's still a residual smell no matter how much you try to air it. But then things go on, then you would hang it out in the sun to air, and after a while the residual smell of the soap powder would vanish. So maybe you are successful in the end. So too, friends, even though a noble disciple has abandoned the 5 lower fetters, still in relation to the 5 components of existence, there lingers in them a residual thought I am, a desire I am, an underlying tendency I am that has not yet been uprooted. As you dwell contemplating dependency on the causes of the 5 components of existence, the residual thought I am, the desire I am, the underlying tendency I am, that had not yet been uprooted, this comes to be uprooted. This is very interesting. There's some very beautiful similes. Say, for example, in the simile of the snake, the Alagadipa Sutta, there's a lovely simile of of invading forces coming in and ransacking a city, and they find the king, and eventually they overthrow the king. So this is like overthrowing the king in the city. And Michael has a comment, Kamika enlightened by his own speech. I have to apologize, I don't really know the full context around this sutta. But yeah, it may have been. Sometimes it's like that, sometimes you teach and you go back and reflect on something and it makes a little bit more sense after you've actually spoken it through with people. But I think maybe Kamek is stating here, what he expects to happen in the future. But unfortunately, I didn't read the full sutta. I only have the notes for this particular edition. Okay, moving on. So that's the scent of I am, and we're going to keep skipping through to the Visuddhimagga, because I think it's the first time we've had a Visuddhimagga quote so far, and I thought it's great we get to talk about the Visuddhimagga if anyone hasn't encountered this book so far. And I mean, my first encounter with the Visuddhimagga, you know, I was in pre-med, and I think we had we had anatomy and physiology, and I was talking to this guy in class, and, you know, just talking about what we did on the weekend. And I said, you know, on the weekend I went to the temple and I went to go see the monks. And he was saying, you know, if you're into meditation, the book you need to read is the Visuddhimagga. And I thought, I'd never heard of this book before. You know, I should go check it out. And I did. So the Visuddhimagga is actually a commentary. It's not a commentary in the sense that it follows a particular text very closely. It's more like an independent text that was compiled on the basis of probably of earlier texts like the Vimuttimagga. So the Visuddhimagga, Visuddhi meaning purification, Magga meaning path, so the path of purification. The earlier text being the Vimuttimagga, Vimutti being freedom, and Magga being path, the path to freedom. So the text that was compiled in Sri Lanka, you know, it was probably a reworking of an earlier Indian source text. There's not, I mean, between the Vimuttimagga and the Visuddhimagga, most of the basic content is the same. The Visuddhimagga has more Abhidharma content, especially in terms of like the analysis of dependent origination. So, you know, if you're interested in that type of thing, it's interesting to check out the differences. So when we have commentarial texts, obviously they belong to a different strata of literature and have a different authority level to the canonical material, because these were compiled by monks, you know, many centuries after the Buddha's parinibbana. So, I mean, the Visuddhimagga, just some of its key characteristics. The canonical inspiration for this text is a text called the Rattavinita Sutta. So the, like, Ratta being a chariot, the Vinita being something like chariots that have been prepared. And the simile of the original text was that to get from place A to place B, you know, you take one chariot, you get off, you get on the next chariot, you get off, and you just keep on changing chariots until you get to the destination you want to. So maybe a bit like changing buses in today's kind of way of thinking. But it's actually, it's quite an interesting text, because the Visuddhimagga is a very ambitious text, because, you know, it was a text written by someone who wanted to show off. Because, you know, you look at the themes, and what theme have they chosen? Firstly, they've chosen quite a difficult and unique sutta. The Rattavinita Sutta, it's a sutta we found a lot of parallels or supporting material within the canon itself. So they've chosen a difficult sutta, first of all, to expand. And, you know, how have they chosen to expand this difficult sutta? They've taken a difficult meditation object. They've taken the earth kasina. So it's it's meant to be a text which is written to show a very high degree of Buddhist learning and scriptural knowledge. And I think it's important to keep that in mind when we look at the Visuddhimagga, because, you know, the earth kasina, the use of an earth disc for meditation, it's really not a common or well-known meditation technique, apart from like very particular monasteries that have come to be based on this text. So, you know, if you're not personally using an earth disc for your meditation, I think, you know, you can all relax. It's just a quirk of the Visuddhimagga. Like, there's no no compulsion to you know, to go and set up the disc of clay in your like backyard or something and go look at it every day until you can give rise to the earth disc, you know, the earth disc vision. But anyway, very nice, you know, very nice text. It has its own quirks. And it also has some very beautiful quotations. So here we have one of the beautiful quotations from the Visuddhimagga. And another key point too about the Visuddhimagga before I move on, the person who was said to have compiled this text was Venerable Buddhaghosa, quite famous as a commentarial compiler. Venerable Buddhaghosa wasn't claiming to do anything unique. The tradition is that he was just compiling the existing commentaries as they had been handed down in Sri Lanka by converting them quite often from the local Prakrit into Pali, so they'd be more accessible to people. And because Venerable Buddhaghosa is so famous, there's a lot of conspiracy theories about Venerable Buddhaghosa. And like most conspiracy theories, most of them just aren't actually true. Anyway, and it's a bit hard to know anything about him anyway because all of the biographies are written a lot later. So I think one of the biographies is like Buddhaghosa Supati, maybe written even up to 1,000 years after Buddhaghosa. Anyway, to the quotation. So the quotation is, mere suffering exists, no sufferer is found. The deed is, but no doer of the deed is there. Nibbana is, but not a person who enters it. The path is, but no traveller on it is seen. So, quite nice quote. And there's a lot of these very beautiful little quotes from the Visuddhimagga. But, the quote's beautiful. This concept of that, sure, we practice towards Nibbana, but that doesn't mean there's someone there who's practicing. Important key concept, but actually I just wanted to talk a little bit about the Visuddhimagga because I thought it would flesh things out a bit. Keeping them moving on. So we're going to skip down a little. We're going to skip to right motivation. So we're on to number 2 as an element of the path. So Elise has just commented, there seems to be a lot more on right view than there is in the other parts of the Eightfold Path. Yeah, I mean, I noticed this too actually, so thank you for raising that. I noticed that this particular Word of the Buddha document, it has actually skipped over some of the elements of the path very briefly. For example, we have just 2 paragraphs here on right motivation. And, we have more expanded. I think this particular text goes a lot actually into like meditation elements as well. There's a lot on right mindfulness. So, yeah, I mean, like I mentioned, there are multiple ways of describing right view. If you wanted to give a very simple definition, you could say right view is seeing the Four Noble Truths, right view is seeing dependent origination. Actually, these are just multiple ways of saying the one thing. So, and I think too, the fact that it's been expanded out, it may just reflect the editorial choice to put a lot of that content about awakening and the 4 types of awakened person together with right view. I mean, there's no compulsion, like there's no compelling reason to me that it has to be done that way. So, yeah, maybe some of it's editorial as well. I mean, like there are lots of different ways of dealing with the Noble Eightfold Path. And when we talk about the Noble Eightfold Path, we talk about Sila, Samadhi, Panya. So Sila being ethical conduct, Samadhi being like meditative absorption, and Panya being wisdom. But actually, there's one conception of the Noble Eightfold Path, which is called the 37 Wings of Awakening, that actually it starts after the Sila Kanda. It starts after we've talked about ethics. So diving straight in from Samadhi. So there's more than one way of conceptualizing these things. the Buddha had a very long teaching career. You know, anything that could possibly be said about it, he probably has at some point said about it. Yeah, so some of these things are just editorial decisions. Moving on. So on to right motivation. So in Pali, right being sama, motivation being sankappa. And we have the Mahasatipatthana Sutta again from the Digha Nikaya. And again, like I said, editorial choices. For whatever reason, Venerable Nyanatiloka has really gone hard on the Mahasatipatthana Sutta. You know, if I had the choice of like which text I would use, you know what, I don't think I would have made the same choice. I don't think I would have looked to that text so much. But I'm sure it has what he needs. It has all of these Noble Eightfold Path definitions, so it would have been convenient. Anyway, so in the Digha Nikaya, in the Mahasatipatthana Sutta, so the greater discourse on the foundations of mindfulness, and looking at the question of what is right motivation. So actions of body, speech, and mind coming from a motive of renunciation, coming from a motive of kindness, and coming from a motive of gentleness. This is called right motivation. And we mentioned some Pali words previously. We mentioned the word nekkhamma meaning renunciation. We mentioned the word avihimsa, which is translated here as kindness. That should be avyapada, translated here as kindness, and gentleness, which is avihimsa. So maybe you might have heard this word ahimsa, you know, the non-harm. Avihimsa is the same kind of concept. It's like the, you know, the harm reduction, the motive of gentleness. Himsa meaning harm. And it's interesting that we only have 2 paragraphs in this, and I thought this was fascinating because in terms of what's important to me in my own meditation, this is hugely important for meditation. You know, the fast road to success in meditation actually is to get the motivation right, just basically to start off with, because quite often we come to meditation and before we've even started, the motivation is a little bit skewed, because unless we really come to meditation with a motive of renunciation, you know, it's very easy to come to meditation looking to get something or to retain something. You know, I've made all of this effort to sit down. You know, where's my beautiful mind? Where's my beautiful breath? You know, why can't I be happier? And that type of thinking, you know, just goes into frustration and trying to control things and, you know, trying to get your mind perfectly right so it can finally deliver you the, you know, the positive feeling that you were craving. So, I mean, just because it's 1 paragraph here, I wouldn't underestimate it. Because if we come to meditation, say, with a genuine motive of renunciation, that, you know, you're not coming to actually get something out of meditation, you're coming to meditation to give up. It makes meditation a lot easier. And the same for coming from a motive of kindness. You know, how do we treat ourselves if our meditation, you know, if our mind wanders for 45 minutes and we've just, you know, we feel like we've wasted some time. Actually, if we can be just kind to our minds, you know, there's no need to scold ourselves. And the same for gentleness. So having these motivations, you know, that's enough. Like if you can get these right, that's pretty much a recipe for success in meditation. Like in and of itself, that's it's a really big deal. And I think that's why Ajahn Brahm's been saying a lot to people recently, like make peace, be kind, be gentle. You know, what's meant by making peace, being kind, being gentle. Making peace is renunciation. And being kind and being gentle is as it's listed. I mean, when we see these big words like renunciation, they might look a little bit like scary, but sometimes like there's other ways of putting it, like letting go or making peace, that make it a bit more accessible. Because obviously when we're content, we're not looking for things. So to be content, it's the happiness of renunciation. So these are all meant to be very happy and positive things. Okay, MN 78. MN 78 is the Samanamandika Sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya, just talking some more about what are unwholesome motivations. They are motivations of desire for the world of the five senses, of aversion and of cruelty. From what do these unwholesome motivations originate? They arise from perceptions of desire for the world of the five senses, of aversion and of cruelty. Where do these unwholesome motivations cease without remainder? They cease in the first jhana. See, that's what I was saying. Like these things are important, because if you get like the motivation right, that's basically a degree of meditation success already. So I'm glad the Majjhima Nikaya agrees with me. So what are the wholesome motivations? They are motivations of renunciation, kindness, and gentleness. From where do these wholesome motivations originate? They arise from perceptions of renunciation, kindness, and gentleness. Where do these wholesome motivations cease without remainder? They cease in the second jhana. If you don't know what this is trying to say, it might look a little bit cryptic. So to really unpack like what the text is actually trying to tell us here. So like when we have this word sankappa, sankappa can also be translated as thought, which might make it make a little bit more sense. So where do our negative thoughts cease? They cease in the first jhana. Where do our positive thoughts cease? They cease in the second jhana. Just being aware that what's called thought also includes a movement of the mind towards the meditation object, and a movement of the mind to hold on to the meditation object. So it has, it can also have a subvocal element. And the second jhana, another term for second jhana is noble silence, because there's no movement of the mind towards the meditation object, and no attempt of the mind to grab hold of the meditation object. So sometimes like this can be a bit tricky for people to get their head around, because there's two words involved. One word is vitakka and one word is vichara. And, because these words vitakka and vichara, they can also just mean like thinking and discursive thinking. It's quite important to get a handle on the fact that these words vitakka and vichara, they can include subvocal thinking, so a slightly different way that the words are being used. So anyway, I'm glad Venerable Nyanatiloka went down that path, and I'm glad he did choose to actually link right motivation to meditation, because I think that's a very practical thing to do. So if we're all good, if we are all hunky-dories, we can keep on moving on. Okay, so right speech. And I was really happy actually that we got right speech today, because I was talking to the teens group yesterday. I was talking to the some of the high school kids, and I was just talking about right speech yesterday. So I'm feeling like in the mood to keep on this topic. So, and we have more Mahasatipatthana Sutta quotes. So what now is right speech? So right speech being Samavacha in Pali. We have lots of words related to the Pali word vacha in English. We have the word vocal. We also have the word vaccine, which is quite interesting, because you think like how is the word vocal related to the word vaccine? But it all makes sense, because this root vach, meaning to speak. How are they related? The goddess Vach in Indian culture is the cow goddess, who is also the goddess of speech. So like I think in French, the word for cow is like la vache or something like that. So that's where we get our word vaccine from. And maybe there's like a historical element involved there that I forget the full backstory about how vaccines came from cows. Maybe some of you know. So anyway, key take-home point is aside from the fact that the goddess Vach is the goddess of both speech and the cow goddess in Hinduism, is that this word vacha is like our English word vocal. Okay, so what is right speech? Right speech is refraining from lying, from malicious gossip, from harsh speech, and from useless chatter. Okay, so lying, we know lying, musawada, gossip. It's interesting that, either the text or that Ajahn Brahm's gone down this path, because the Pali word here is pisinawacha. This word pisina is related to another word, which is pe sunya. So the ones who are dear to us, that's what's meant by this, by the suffix pe, and destroying is what's meant by sunya. So the speech, which is pe sunya or pisina, is the speech which destroys our closeness to other people. So sometimes it's called divisive speech, and I think I like divisive speech a lot better. Okay. From harsh speech, the parisavacha, and from useless chatter, so Pali sampalapa. So I think the text has actually given us a fair bit of material on these, so we can go through and have a look at what they are individually. Okay, so continuing on from the Chunda Sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya, abstaining from lying. You abandon lying and abstain from false speech. If you are summoned to a court and questioned as a witness thus, so tell what you know, then not knowing you say, I do not know, or knowing you say, I do know, or not seeing you say, I do not see, or seeing you say, I do see. Thus you do not consciously speak falsehood for your own ends, or for another's ends, or for some trifling worldly end. So the example given here is a very clear example of lying, which is perjury, obviously an offense. And sometimes, when we talk about these ethical issues, sometimes you can think of them as being like kind of like a concentric circle. At the center of the circle is the thing that everyone agrees is wrong. So, like everyone agrees that perjury is a bad thing. But, as you get further and further out towards the end of this edges of the circle, there are some things that people are a bit unsure about or may have some gray character. So here we've been given, the thing that's at the center, the thing that people are quite certain about is wrong. And we're moving text. We're jumping a bit. We're jumping to the Vinaya, which is the Buddhist monastic code, and we're in the Vibhanga, in the analysis of the rules. And we have this particular class of rules, which is called Parajika. Parajika being an expulsion offense. So for the bhikkhus, the four offenses, which will get them immediately kicked out of the sangha. So their monkhood will be immediately revoked from the time they commit them. There doesn't actually need to be a second meeting. The fact that they've committed them itself is what disqualifies them from being a monk. Anyway, and and the same for nuns. We have 8 parajikas, and there's a little bit of social context around the additional 4 because they're things that are more specific to nuns. For example, in terms of the parts of the body that can't be touched. We have additional rules, obviously, because it's just because of biology in some cases that women have more parts of the body that can't be touched than men. Okay, so to be a deliberate lie, you must be aware, I am going to speak falsely. While speaking, be aware that I am telling a lie, and afterwards be aware that I have misrepresented the truth. And this is probably from the analysis. So sometimes people are a little bit confused what actually is a lie. And like I mentioned earlier, the Buddha said intention, monks, is what I call karma. So to actually tell a lie, you need to have had that intention to deceive another person. Without that, it's not a lie. Maybe you're just being a little bit careless, or maybe you didn't know. So there are many things which aren't lies. For example, making plans and then changing them later. Maybe it's a bit inconvenient, but it's not a lie, etc., etc. Continuing on. Abstaining from malicious gossip, so abstaining from the divisive speech. You abandon malicious gossip and abstain from talk that causes division. Having heard something, you do not repeat it in order to divide people from one another. Instead, you are one who reunites those who are divided, a promoter of unity who enjoys concord, rejoices in concord, delights in concord, a speaker of words that promote concord. So I was telling the teens group yesterday that actually divisive speech, it's one of the biggest issues in the world today, because they've done studies about why there's religious violence, why there's intercommunal violence, and from the Second World War onwards, actually, what's really been identified as something that typically precedes communal violence is hate speech. So just introducing the teens to this concept of what is hate speech, because it's something we saw with the Rohingya in Burma. What immediately preceded some of the the actions against Rohingya populations. Actually, what came before it was the hate speech. So it's something very important for us to be aware of in a Buddhist community context, that the Buddha has actually told us quite explicitly that hate speech, it's not part of the Noble Eightfold Path, it's part of the wrong Eightfold Path. And it's not something that's ambiguous. In the Vinaya, there is a particular set of 10 grounds for insults called the Akosavituni. So 10 prohibited grounds for insulting another human being. And one of them is actually race. So, as a monk or nun, if you insult someone based on their race, ideally in a strong community, you would actually be called to account for that, because it is a breach of Vinaya. So, something important to note. The Buddha was very much in favor of bringing people together. And that's what's being said here, is that you are one who reunites those who are divided, a promoter of unity, who enjoys concord, rejoices in concord, delights in concord, a speaker of words that promote concord. And sometimes we can get a little bit careless with speech, or just a little bit callous. Sure, I said that, how you feel about it doesn't matter. But I've seen some of the senior nuns do this very well in particular, actually making the conscious effort to choose ways of speaking that aren't offensive to people, that will actually bring people together and help to build, unity and positive relationships long term. And, when we're dealing with our own in-group, it's always very easy. Where this becomes difficult is when you're dealing with, the out-group. So, anyone can use the nice words with your in-people. It's the mark of cultivation, to be able to expand that care and concern, to the out-group. So the Buddha here is being, if we had the Buddha in the world today, I'm sure he would have been a very responsible member of society. Okay, abstaining from harsh speech. Having abandoned harsh speech, you abstain from harsh speech. You speak words that are gentle, pleasing to the ear, and lovable. Words that go to the heart are courteous, desired by many, and agreeable to many. And quoting from the Kakachipama Sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya, even if terrorists were to torture you, terrorists, such as by savagely cutting off your limbs with a two-handled saw, one who gave rise to a mind of hate towards them would not be carrying out my teaching. Like I said, this is Ajahn Brahm's adaptation. So I think the original was bandits. So here we have terrorists. So this is very 21st century. Okay, so even if they savagely cut off your limbs with a two-handled saw, so no anesthetic, just straight chopping off the limbs. One who gives rise of a mind of hate toward them would not be carrying out my teaching. Instead, you should train yourself thus. My mind will remain unaffected, and I shall speak no bad words. I shall abide compassionate for their welfare, with a mind of loving kindness without inner hate. I shall abide pervading them with a mind imbued with loving kindness, and starting with them, I shall abide pervading the all-encompassing world with a mind imbued with loving kindness, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. That is how you should train. So, people's, when we go through this sutta in a monastic context, people's typical reaction to this is that, it's all a bit too hard because this is a very high standard. Could you really have, your limbs cut off by someone and not feel any ill will towards them? But actually, that's what the Buddha's teaching and recommending, through going through the process of awakening, by reaching these very highly attained states, such as, non-return, arahantship. Actually, we can be such that we don't actually have it in us to even be frustrated or, to even feel a negative emotion, because, it's just not part of our character, and that's the degree of purity that the Buddha is advocating for. So, and what he's recommending here is that, even prior to that, what we can do, we can train to be like these pure people, and, to also not, even if we have that underlying tendency to get negative, to not cultivate it, but to actively cultivate things like compassion and loving kindness. But yeah, very inspiring sutta, the simile of the saw. Sutta. Okay, moving on, abstaining from useless chatter. Having abandoned useless chatter, you abstain from unbeneficial talk. You speak at a proper time, speak truth, speak what is beneficial, speak on the Dhamma and the discipline. At a proper time, you speak words that are worth recording, reasonable, succinct, and beneficial. Okay, again, very big issue in the world today. There's a lot of opportunities to waste a lot of time talking with people. We have so much social media, but actually the Buddha is saying, if it's useless, it's better to refrain from it. So you speak at a proper time, speak truth, speak what is beneficial, speak on the Dhamma and the discipline. At a proper time, you speak words that are worth recording. So, very key point, reasonable, succinct, and beneficial. And I think it's an interesting point here too that, discussing Buddhism, discussing things like the hindrances and how to remove the hindrances, these are all, worthwhile things to talk about, talking about the wholesome, talking about the unwholesome, what actually is the best way to live our lives. All of these things are very beneficial and meaningful things to talk about. Okay, so we have, again, we're jumping text a little bit, but that covers, these four elements of right speech in part of the context of the Noble Eightfold Path. And I asked the teens yesterday, I asked them, can wrong speech be a form of violence? And I didn't really know what I thought about this myself, but, the teens were quite convinced that actually, some of these forms of speech, like the harsh speech or the divisive speech, they can actually be forms of violence because, we're being actively, we're not caring about how other people feel and about the hurt and harm that can be caused to them, through what we're saying. So the teens were quite convinced yesterday that we need to take speech very seriously. Okay, so we have another text here. This is about the right way to criticize someone. And there's no reference here, but I think this text comes from the Vinaya because, this is something that's quite relevant in a community or monastic setting that, also probably quite relevant in your workplace or, in society. But relevant in a monastic setting, of course, because, in a community of Buddhist practice, we have a mutual obligation to also support one another. And, supporting one another, sometimes it doesn't mean just letting anything go. Sometimes it means we do have to actually actively talk to people about something we've noticed. It's like that. And anyway, what the text is saying here is before you criticize someone, you should be mindful with respect to 5 things and carefully establish 5 things. Is my bodily behavior pure? Do I possess bodily behavior that is pure, flawless, and irreproachable? Does this quality exist in me or not? If your bodily behavior is not pure and you do not possess bodily behavior that is pure, flawless, and irreproachable, there will be those who say of you, please train your own bodily behavior first. So second criteria, is my behavior of speech pure? Do I possess behavior of speech that is pure, flawless, and irreproachable? Does this quality exist in me or not? If your behavior of speech is not pure, and you do not possess behavior of speech that is pure, flawless, and irreproachable, there will be those who say of you, please train your own speech first. So criteria number 3, have I established a mind of loving kindness without resentment to my associates? Does this quality exist in me or not? If you have not established a mind of loving kindness without resentment to your associates, there will be those who say of you, please establish a mind of loving kindness without resentment to your associates first. So criteria number 4, am I learned? And do I retain and understand what I have learned? Have I learned much about those teachings that are good in the middle, good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end, which proclaim the perfectly complete and pure spiritual life? Have I retained them in my mind, mentally investigated them and understood them properly? Does this quality exist in me or not? If not, there will be those who say of you, please learn your own tradition first. And number 5, again, a little bit monastic specific. Have both monastic codes been well learned and understood by me? Does this quality exist in me or not? If not, there will be others who say of you, please learn the monastic rules first. And again, both monastic codes here being a basic criteria of a monk or a nun who is well trained. And, in the commentaries it says, you shouldn't actually allow your students, to go out into the world. Your students should remain dependent until they've actually learned both monastic codes. So both monastic codes being the code of the bhikkhus and the code of the bhikkhunis. So obviously, right up until the commentarial period, right up until the end of what's called the Anuradhapura period in Sri Lanka, so up until the 11th century CE, having bhikkhunis was completely normal throughout the Theravāda world, at least, throughout the Sri Lankan Theravāda world. And, you know, the commentarial world, the world of the Vinaya, is a world where it's taken completely for granted that bhikkhunis exist. For someone like Venerable Buddhaghosa, you know, very much the archetype of the Theravāda tradition, he would have had bhikkhunis around him his whole life. He would have known bhikkhunis. You know, it may have been very difficult for him to imagine that, you know, even a few hundred years after he finished his work, you know, there would be no more bhikkhunis in Sri Lanka. So, you know, but today it's actually very difficult to find monks who are educated enough in the Bhikkhuni Vinaya. So, you know, the standard of monastic education today, it doesn't even meet, you know, this basic criteria that would have been accepted at the time when the Vinaya was written. So as we get more bhikkhunis, it's very good if, you know, if we can return to the earlier standard, where knowing both codes was actually considered a fundamental requirement of training. That, you know, this is something that's very, maybe a little bit specific to, you know, the type of environment that I live in. Okay, but, you know, the point being here, like, there's no point telling people that what you're doing is wrong unless you actually have, like, learned the monastic rules. Okay, moving on. You resolve to speak at a proper time, not an improper time. 7, you resolve to speak truthfully, not falsely. 8, you resolve to speak gently, not harshly. 9, you resolve to speak in a beneficial way, not in a way that causes harm. 10, you resolve to speak with a mind of loving kindness, not while harbouring ill will. So maybe these last, the remainder, are a bit more generally applicable. So if we do ever need to talk to someone about their behaviour, you know, hopefully very rarely, you know, it's good to find a time that's suitable for them. You know, even people who are very approachable, you know, we all have times that are more difficult for us. So if you can just ask the person, look, is now a good time to talk? It's probably going to give you a much better result than, you know, if you just come at someone with, you know, whatever it was you wanted to say. And I think what this text is really calling us to do, it's really calling us to examine our motivation for speaking to someone very deeply. Because, you know, there's a lot of requirements there in terms of, like, what our motivation actually is. Because, you know, to actually talk to someone about an issue without, you know, not having any frustration there, you know, just out of a place of complete love, that's actually, it's a very, you know, it's a very big ask in terms of what our motivation actually is before, you know, we approach someone to talk about an issue. So, I mean, when someone approaches you and they want to talk about something and they don't have any frustration, you know, their attitude is very relaxed. You can tell they're being kind. You know, just obviously that's not going to be a conversation that's going to cause future issues. It's likely to defuse the situation. But yeah, I think in general, you know, people are more responsive to praise than to criticism. It's very rare to find someone who's actually responsive to criticism. Okay, so that brings us to the end of today's content. So hooray, we are actually on track to complete the Noble Eightfold Path by December the 22nd. Before we wrap up for this evening, are there any final questions before we go? Right. Someone wanted to unmute.
Ayya,
Yeah.
just thought I'd ask, you know, the you know, you're talking about the Parajika number 4,
Yeah.
the about lying.
Yeah.
Does that does that mean that if you lie about anything, or, you know, if a monastic lies about anything, or does it need to be a specifically about Dhamma?
Thanks, Adrian. Thank you for
Yeah.
pointing that out. That's something I should have mentioned. And I think you know the answer to this question, but I think you've just kindly given me the opportunity to explain further. So, thanks so much for that. Actually, what's meant by lying in a Parajika context, you have to make a claim to something that's called an Uttari Manusa Dhamma. So, and what is an Uttari Manusa Dhamma? Uttari means above. So it's like the English word ultimate. So that's Uttari. Manusa is like the English word man, so human, and Dhamma is a state. So to actually, fall under the Parajika, basically you need to lay claim to being, one of these four awakened beings, and you need to know it's false. And someone needs to have understood the claim that you're trying to make. So lying in general in the Vinaya is actually a pachittya. It's a confession offense. So all other